welcome to another round of the Phoenix Club here. We've got the first episode of the week. It is, of course, the review show from Premier League Weekly. I'm Josh, joined as always by Tom. I'm going to go straight into a couple of last week's massive derbies. First of all, then, into the capital, North London derby, Arsenal and Spurs, 1-1 draw at Wembley Stadium. We're going to come to Tottenham first. Is Pochettino perhaps wrecking his chances of becoming Manchester United manager?
That's a tough one. I think, to be honest with you, having heard the news this morning that Solskjaer's contract with Mould has gone, that there was no extended contract, I think, to be honest with you, it's a foregone conclusion that Solskjaer's stay will be extended at Old Trafford. I think Pochettino's recent performances haven't helped him convince the United board otherwise. But of course, they've just beaten Dortmund in the Champions League as well. I just think that Emery actually out-trumped him with tactics, out-thought him, and Arsenal were the better side in that derby.
You kind of led into my next question, really, which was, are Emery's tactics finally coming to fruition? Let's compare, I know, with Maurizio Sarri, who's still perhaps struggling to get his ideas onto his team. Unai Emery has done a remarkable job. Perhaps not so much in the opening months, even though they had that unbeaten run, but they still were finding themselves just outside the top four. They broke in for a brief period. They're now back out of it. But as we've said before, it's more of a long-term project, Unai Emery. So are we seeing the beginnings of what could be the next generation of successful Arsenal players?
So comparing Emery with Sarri for one, I actually think that's a little bit harsh on Sarri. I mean, I was very harsh on Sarri. But if you take my article from Chelsea Echo, give it a read, I think Sarri's made a lot of changes to the Chelsea side and made us much more hard to beat, and is sort of adapting the way Emery had to adapt. I actually think Emery, he did very well in North London derby, but I think he's too willing to change tactics willy-nilly into, he must have tried about 5 different shapes this season. But I do think that for the North London derby, he did do well. I'd be interested to see whether next season, once he can mould his squad a bit more, whether he will introduce a more consistent shape like Sarri's done.
Well, for all the good things that Emery has done at the Emirates, one thing that still confuses me is his decision to let Aaron Ramsey go to Juventus. Well, let him leave on a free transfer. Now, Ramsey did score the opener of the game against Tottenham. He's still a key part of the squad. So why, he's not exactly old, what is the logic, I guess, is the best question to ask. What is the logic in letting a player with Ramsey's experience go?
Well, what I was saying, was it him? What I mean is, I know he scored. I'm not sure that decision to let him go was down to...
I see.
I reckon it was a much, much higher boardroom presence, really. I think...
well, let's just say whoever's decision it was, why would they let him go?
I think it must have been the wage demands of about 200,000 a week. I mean, I think Monkey is being touted as the next sort of Arsenal director of football coming across from Roma. I think he would do really well in partnership with Emery, actually. And I'm not sure he would have made that decision had he been there at the time. I think it must be down to money, because Arsenal had no money in January. And then after that whole Ozil debacle, paying 300,000 a week to keep him, I think they weren't willing to do the same to Ramsey, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess I still think it's madness. Anyway, a last quick question. Would you agree that it's 2 points drop for Spurs, 1 point game for Arsenal?
No, I wouldn't. If I'd got told that result before the game, I'd have said that. But watching the game, with the Arsenal missed penalty and the missed chances, I thought Arsenal had much the better of the game. I actually think they deserved the 3 points. So for them, I would argue it was 2 points lost.
Certainly glad it was just a draw in the end. It certainly keeps United in a chance of third, really. But moving up north to the second derby of the weekend, I think it was also the final game of the weekend, as Everton hosted Liverpool at Goodison Park. Ended up being a 0-0 draw. Again, very happy bunny. But again, it's probably the obvious question. Are Liverpool bottling it once again?
Too early to say. I read a great article on the Mail Online about Jurgen Klopp and his Dortmund sides. And he had I think in 2012, he had his team, I think 10 matches to go and on level on points with Bayern and was able to do the business. I find it very funny going through Twitter and all this sense of Liverpool as bottle jobs. And I would find it funny if it happens, but I think it's way, way too early to rule them out. I mean, yeah, Klopp's becoming more conservative with his subs and stuff, but they're too good. They are too good to be counted out at this moment.
But is it not fair to say that they are perhaps bottling it, because they were at one point? I think there was a 10-point gap when they'd played a few games more than City. Then it went to 7, and now City are 1 point ahead of them. So the general trend of the season, Liverpool are on the down, City are perhaps more on the up. So is it not perhaps fair to say that, given what has happened and given where Liverpool were, that it's not it's not like they've been neck and neck with City for the whole season, and now Liverpool are gonna push ahead. Liverpool were ahead of City, and now City have gone above them, and ultimately City can only go above them if Liverpool drop points, and I think that's something like 4 draws in their last 5 now. So,
I hate to put parallels to 2012, Josh, but I think City were about 8 or 9 ahead of United. And then Fergie's boys pulled it back. And then City on the last day of the season won the league on goal difference. And also, you've got to take into account the fact that teams are going to have bad runs of form in a season. Just because City's was in December, where I think they had a bad run of about, a couple of defeats, a couple of draws in 5 games. Liverpool's is in February. I think it's hard to say Liverpool are bottling it. They're just having their slightly iffy run at a slightly later point. And while people look at, and Liverpool were 10 clear or whatever, they're still in with a really good chance of securing their first Premiership title, in my opinion.
I bloody hope they don't. Anyway, moving on to the blue half of Liverpool. Is Marco Silva perhaps doing a better job of securing his job for next season? Everton currently in 10th, not a million miles away from 9th, 8th, 7th. It's perhaps not what the Everton board wanted when they appointed him, but do you think that he'll be sacked in the summer?
For me, if I was in the Everton board, I'd probably sack him, because I think 10th, for the amount of money they've spent on key players, your Sigurdssons, people like that. I know Sigurdsson was obviously before. The amount of money they've spent, look at Yerry Mina, Lucas Digne. Their players are really too good for 10th place. I mean, they're spending that money to try and get into Europe. And for me, they haven't looked like Europa League contenders or Europa League qualifiers at any point this season, really, bar maybe the first month or so. For me, I wouldn't. Whether the board want to give him time, I'm not so sure. Silva's a short-term manager. I'm intrigued to know what happens if he does get a second year, but if I was the board, I certainly wouldn't give him that time.
On a similar note then, if Jurgen Klopp doesn't win the league with Liverpool, and he doesn't win any trophy this season with Liverpool, should he be sacked?
No, I don't think so. A lot of Liverpool fans have told me give him one more year, and if he keeps this up and doesn't win things, loses in finals, drops points gaps, maybe then they have to consider it. But I think you've got to remember where they started with him, in a sort of 8th place team. So for me, no, absolutely.
Actually, very, very quickly, is Mo Salah's form perhaps to blame in part for why Liverpool have had so many struggles? So of course, when you've got a player that's so instrumental and is contributing to so many goals, when he's not in form, then the team is obviously suffering. And when Liverpool won 5-0 against Watford, perhaps it doesn't get noticed as much. But when you're drawing 0-0 with Everton, a game that Liverpool really should be winning on paper, and Salah was atrocious in that game. That one-on-one with Pickford, and he absolutely fluffed it.
Yeah.
So, is it perhaps, can he be blamed?
Well, on Salah, it's interesting, because I think last season when people said he was at his best, he would spurn a lot of chances. He has to be fed a lot of chances, and if you feed him a lot of chances, he'll score, and he'll score from hard positions. But I think it's beyond the issue of Salah not being on form. He's a very good player, but I think you have to look further back in the field. I've never rated Naby Keita, and you have to look at the other two of the front three, and also at Milner and Klopp substitutions for me.
Absolutely. Anyway, we are going to round off this week's reviews of last week's Premier League matches. We've got the Premier League preview show coming tomorrow, but before that, Tom is going to be coming back at you with some clues for this week's Guess Who. So, Tom.
So this week's Guess Who, we'll give you 3 clues as normal. And the first one is that I've played in 7 different countries. So our players played in 7 different European countries. Some of those in the big 4-5 leagues. A couple of them not, just as a little bit of a clue there. He's never won an honour in the top 5 leagues. So he's not perhaps taken full advantage of his time in those leagues, which is another one. And his third one is that he was a teammate of Paul Gascoigne, one of my favourite players anyway. I love Italia 90, and Gaza was an absolute legend. But those are your 3 clues, guys. And if you can guess a player, put it in the comments. And I'm happy to give Twitter shout-outs to anyone who gets it right. I'll put this on Twitter as well. If anyone can comment me a right answer, I will be giving you shout-outs. I'm sure Josh will as well. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching the show. It's been a really interesting one, discussing what's going to happen towards the business end of the season. I've been Tom, this has been Josh, and thanks for watching.